In essence, physical literacy should just be thought of in the same way as academic literacy, reading, writing and arithmetic. In other words, those three subjects, once you've started to master them or get to a reasonable level, it opens up a world of possibilities. It opens up the ability to study anything else, if you like. And so physical literacy is the same sort of domain. It's about really a menu, an array of particular tasks that someone needs to be able to develop to be the building blocks for more advanced forms of movement. It was actually coined by Professor Margaret Whitehead in the United Kingdom back several years ago. It's a term that had actually surfaced at various times, but more recently it's really become almost de rigueur in child and youth sport. I think it's important to understand that it's not a fixed entity, and physical literacy actually goes throughout life. You know, what does physical literacy mean for an 80-year-old versus a 60-year-old versus 40-year-old, and so forth. The key thing for us in dealing with children and youth is that over those first 2 decades of life, and particularly that first decade to a decade and a half, sort of through to about 15 years of age, we're really laying the foundation for the base of movement for the rest of a youngster's life. And this is everything from the things that are innate, so think of a baby learning to sit and then learning to crawl and then learning to do those first steps while holding on to something or someone, and then gradually moving into sort of rather sort of jerky walking, and then gradually a bit of flow, and you know, by the time they're 6 or 7 they're learning to skip in the action as opposed to with a rope. And that's a very advanced movement. Those are sort of innate, we're sort of hardwired for those. But on top of that, it's really about the exposure to youngsters through both environment, appropriate levels of teaching, coaching, instruction, and what that looks like, and lots of play to gradually develop you know, the confidence and the ability to move well. And on top of that then, the other aspects of movement, and particularly around sort of physical activity and movement, learning to ride a bicycle, learning to skate, learning to ski, learning to jump, run, throw, hit something with an implement such as with a racket sport or hockey stick, those type of aspects, and to do that across different domains. So for example, the ability to interact with the ground, which is most activities, running around, kicking a soccer ball. Then snow and ice, very important. That brings the added dimension of pressure sensitivity and balance whilst moving very quickly. Then in and on the water, those are two actually different aspects. One of the most important things, apart from being able to save your life and possibly someone else, is learning to swim. But swimming actually puts a human into a somewhat alien environment. Many children have to overcome just that fear factor initially, and we should not deride youngsters. Learning to put your face in the water, learning to go under the water and hold your breath and be comfortable, actually comfortable and understanding that you can hold your breath for 30 seconds, a minute or longer or whatever. And then actually learning to propel yourself on your front, on your back in the water. And then there's the difference between that and being on the water, so think canoeing, or stand-up paddleboard, or something like standing on a log at the lake, whatever it may be in the middle of the water. It makes me laugh a little bit. Adults, we go to a gymnasium and we often have to create an unstable surface and do all sorts of drills and weight exercises on a Swiss ball or Bosu ball or those blue sort of spongy pads, where you can actually do that having lots of fun in the summer months by getting out on a lake or a piece of water at the sea or whatever it might be, and learning to surf or paddle or whatever it might be. Canoeing, great Canadian pastime, and that actually teaches automatically these things to do with balance on an unstable surface, and you're having fun and probably learning another skill at the same time. Then you have things like dealing with movement through the air, and whilst we may think that many sports are to do with being on the ground, often as not, aside from gymnastics and dance and diving, those things which are obviously naturally in the air, think of a hockey player skating at great speed. Well, both feet are rarely on the ice at exactly the same time. At times, if you look at really slow motion video, you'll see that both feet are often off the ice as well. Hockey players often have to jump to get through or get past people or whatever might happen. So the ability to actually understand yourself in space and time is important, which is why for parents they should understand that things like dance and gymnastics are very, very important grounding tools in the early years, actually along with anything to do with music, because of setting down an understanding of rhythm with many of these movements is very important as part of that physical literacy. And then the what I've done, I talked about the ground, snow and ice, in and on water, moving through the air. And then I think the other one to that would be really bringing those together. So a child running around, climbing a tree, climbing a climbing frame, and you start to put all these type of things together. That's why play and creative play is actually so important in teaching. And we must make sure that children have plenty of time in the right environments to be allowed to do that. And parents really need to take a Valium and a step backwards and not be so paranoid about their children. We're robbing them of their childhood at times. And I won't pull any punches when I say that I'm often disgusted by what I really see around age group sport. We break all the rules. We don't understand that children need to be children. Our neighbours to the south, are in various sports are really, taking the world by storm with their attitude around even catchphrases like "let kids be kids," for example, and the whole aspect of understanding that children have lots of potential, and that potential is the ability to obviously have a chance, given the right environment, etc., of moving forward to a higher level. It is not a display necessarily of excellence right now. And another thing that parents need to understand is that brutal reality is that a child may be blessed at a certain time on this continuum from 0 years to about 15 or 16 with having some apparent capability, but that doesn't mean to say they're necessarily going to be superb when it really matters as an adult. And don't confuse child and youth sport with the highest levels of sport.
So even on that note, what would be something that is encouraging for you from the AMP standpoint, as far as physical literacy, and, why that, or how you see it involved in the AMP program?
Okay, well, I think from my standpoint, people ask me why would I want to be involved or provide some direction, and I'll make it very clear. I'm interested to be involved in any group that really wants to push the envelope and in particular do, with the current knowledge levels that we have, the best possible thing for children, to make sure that we don't squander their lives. They're 6 once, they're 8 once, they're 10, 12, 14 once. This is a very small part of their lives, but it's in terms of the overall lifespan, hopefully, but it's a very, very important period of time, and we miss plenty of opportunities where it's very hard to sort of catch up at times, and that's why we need a more measured and patient approach at times, and understanding that children progress at different rates, and their responses to different environments also differ, and what motivates a 6-year-old versus a 12-year-old versus an 18-year-old is significantly different. And this constant wanting to rush children through childhood and youth is completely misguided, would not be tolerated in most other aspects to do with children's lives and in most other pursuits of excellence, whether it's academia or the arts in general. And for me, I just view physical activity in general for anyone and sport as just part of the family of the performing arts, really. It's an expression of what someone can do, and like anything else, there's only room at the top for a very few. It's the pursuit of anything. I might want to be the greatest physicist in the world. Well, I better be one of the few percentage that's going to be able to have that desire and capability. Or I might want to be a concert pianist, but there's a precious few who make that great. It's like being elite in anything, and parents need to understand that around sport, that yes, everyone might live through the dream. I played with my friends and I've scored the goal in soccer by Beckham in my mind and all this type of stuff, but it doesn't mean to say I'm going to be or was going to be a great soccer player. But we can live vicariously and have those dreams, but we need the children to really have a really great time so that they want to pursue some of these pursuits, and more importantly that they develop the that array of skills that they will carry through into the rest of their lives. And one of the critical things I think that sport is extremely useful is to help make active, resilient, confident, and creative youngsters, so that we equip them with an ability to withstand the challenges of life, and above all, because the evidence is overwhelming, that physical activity is extremely important in maintaining a healthy lifestyle. And when you consider many of the challenges that we have from a healthcare point of view, and the type of things that often kill us before our time, they're related to things like poor nutrition and inactive lifestyles. So this grounding, this physical literacy, is absolutely vital in making sure we give every child an opportunity of thinking about a healthy lifestyle for the rest of their lives, and for the precious few that will stay the course and have both the drive, the appetite, the hunger, as well as the underlying competency to pursue higher levels of sport.
Now, what about,
Pause 2 seconds.